Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're hosting a conversation with the renowned author Adriana Trigiani, whose many vibrant novels represent the lives and tribulations of Italians everywhere. The host institution of this conversation is the Garibaldi Meucci Museum. We are a repository of some of the most significant history and accomplishments of the Italian people. Our collection consists of the narratives and artifacts of the two title characters, Giuseppe Garibaldi, the great general and unifier of Italy, and Antonio Meucci, the true inventor of the first telephone. These two great men met through a series of unlikely circumstances and only remained under one roof for a short 8 months. Antonio Meucci was born in Florence in 1808. He was a curious and brilliant young man who had a passion for science and a longing for a unified Italy. After a brief imprisonment for his political beliefs, he became an engineer for a great opera company in Florence. There he met and married Esther Meucci. Their lives took them from Florence to Havana, Cuba, and eventually Staten Island, New York. All the time they worked for various opera companies, as he an inventor and engineer, and she a seamstress and a costumer. Meucci and his wife came to New York to work in an opera company at the base of Manhattan. Garibaldi came to New York as a wounded and heartbroken refugee of a failed rebellion against Rome, having lost both his war and his wife, and running as a fugitive from the French, unable to abide in any European or North African state. He fled to New York, to the Carabinieri, an international anti-monarchy organization made up of the successful expatriate Italian businessmen. In their ranks, he met and bonded with Meucci. To escape the mayhem of the city, the Meuccis, Garibaldis, his aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Beauvais, and the noted tenor, Salvi, moved to a 4-bedroom cottage that currently houses our collection. Over the short cohabitation, Garibaldi gained the strength and support he needed to return to unify Italy. Meucci's experimentation resulted in the invention of the telephone, and the world changed its course as a result. Today we host a great variety of authors, artists, philosophers, academics, and other notable persons in an effort to enrich all who participate in our programs. And now, a conversation with Adriana Trigiani.
Okay, thank you for your patience as we did that. Let me just let in a few more people that joined us. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce Adriana Trigiani, who is New York Times bestselling author. She's written 20 books, fiction and nonfiction. She is a playwright, a producer, a director. She was a writer, I believe, for The Cosby Show and A Different World. She had her first debut novel, Big Stone Gap, was a major motion picture that she wrote and directed. She's the co-founder of the Origin Project, which brings writing into the classrooms. She is a huge philanthropist, and she's an all-around great person who is talented beyond our imagination. So now I would like to introduce you to Adriana Trigiani. Happens.
Yep, you're good.
Did I? Oh, there we go. Okay, I have to unmute you. All right, well, no, she's muted. Has to unmute. Okay. Can you unmute yourself, Adriana?
I'm muted now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right, great. Thank you for being here with us, and thanks for doing this with the Garibaldi Meucci Museum. We're happy to host you for this virtual event. And The Good Left Undone. I normally do not read books like this over the summer. I usually read fluff, and lighthearted, easy reads. This book was my favorite book of the summer. I could not believe I couldn't put it down. I didn't want to stop reading it. I did not want to give my kids dinner. I did not want to do any of my responsibilities. It's just incredible. Not everyone on the Zoom has read the book yet. So can you give us just a brief summary of what it's about?
Well, first of all, Anne-Marie, thank you. I see all these beautiful, my friends, Nancy Quinn's here. I can't believe it. You're all here. This book was I called it, even when I was writing it, my If I Get Hit by a Bus book. It's the book that says everything that I hope to say about life. And prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, I really missed my grandmothers and I missed my mother. So I wanted to write a story that captured their personalities and wisdom. So that's not enough for a novel. You have to have a river upon which the thoughts can really move. And we visited the Vatican about 7 years ago. And there's a whole story about that, but the Vatican jewels are a big part of that. Then I came home and took a class at Christie's because I really wanted to learn how they cut stones and how they mount them and where do diamonds come from, where do rubies come from. And that's the waft and weave of the novel all came from those classes and from research. The story of the Arendelle Star. Now, I had already started the novel probably 6 years ago, maybe more, a little more. And I got to Scotland to direct a movie. And I was wandering around Glasgow. I made a list of places I wanted to see. I crashed a wedding. I was taking pictures. I don't go to the reception, just the mass. And during the mass, I realized that every song that they played, the bride chose, my mother had chosen for her funeral 9 months earlier. So you see how we sort of start to make
It all comes together.
It really all comes together. And then there were things that I wanted you to have, like the warnings of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And Marseille, France is a part of the story. Italy, France, Scotland, and the whole Pope John the 23rd element came in because that's where I got the warnings of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. So everything in this book matters. Everything, every scene, every character. I cut 300 pages of Winston Churchill because when I was done, I had this gigantic book. And I realized that it didn't matter why Winston Churchill made a bad decision. What mattered was that it happened and that he, as great leaders will do, knew he made a mistake and tried to fix it, and it was too late. 6 weeks later, he reversed the whole law that he had put in place. So everything about this book, it's like an onion. I just kept pulling, except I kind of did it in reverse. I pulled the peels up till I had the central idea. And Matilda, to just explain, I'm not very good at this, am I? Matilda knows she's dying. She looks fine. Her husband doesn't know it. Her kids don't know it. It's a contemporary story in Italy. And what she realizes as she's doing the traditional ritual of giving her granddaughter a piece of jewelry before her wedding, this is a family of jewelers. She realizes that she has done a bad job of sharing the family story. So she decides to tell them the story and set the record straight. And that's the novel.
Yeah, it was, I have to say, as an Italian American who just came back from Italy 2 weeks ago, learning from your book that there was this enclave of Italians that lived in Scotland, Italians, and it was, talk about an onion. I went down a rabbit hole because then while I was taking a break from reading the book, I was Googling all about this because it was something that I had no idea.
Never heard it, yeah.
And I mentioned it to other people thinking, well, maybe it was just me. I just didn't know about it. But then the more I spoke to people, a lot of people, most people didn't know about it. So it's such an interesting story, and it's such
And here you are, Anne-Marie, you're well-read. I think everybody that's listening, if you come to a book event, you're interested in ideas, history, that you're well-read, you're educated, but I didn't know the story either. And then I figured out why, and that's why it's important that this novel got published in the way that it did.
It's one of the things that I love about your books, as the mother of a daughter, especially. Most of your books, this one in particular we're talking about, have such strong female characters, and they have characters that face a million different problems, and yet they're rational, and they're just strong. And I think that's such a positive message for girls to have. You know, as I said earlier, my daughter is 18, and there's a line in the Good Left Undone that I have a million notes because my memory has gone elsewhere at this point in my life. So if I don't write it down, I forget it. But there's this one part where Matilda, the grandmother, is talking to her granddaughter. And she says, listen to me, love yourself. That's the greatest adventure. When you love yourself, you want to find your purpose, something only you can do in the way only you can do it. Make things, create. And if a man comes along, and believe me, he will, the relationship is already off to a good start because both of you love the same person. You, lucky him. When I read that, I got a Post-it note and made a different color so I could highlight it. It was just so, it like gets you right here. And that's what your books do. There was, over the summer, I was listening to Rococo on Audible, and your books are so relatable to so many people across all different nationalities. So I'm listening to Rococo, and I'm driving in the car, making dinner, whatever it is I'm doing. And at one point, I'm like, oh my God, she was at my grandmother's house in West Islip, Long Island in 1989, a fly on the wall. How does she know that this is what goes on? And it's just so, the characters are so identifiable to so many people. And mine was on an ethnic, because you write about Italians, so it's the food that's similar to what we have, and the characteristics, the phrases. But I have a very dear friend of mine who is not Italian, and we were reading The Shoemaker's Wife for our book club. And there was a line in The Shoemaker's Wife that got her. Let me see if I can find it because I don't want to mess it up. I have a million notes here. The line in the book was, orphans have many parents. And she said when she heard that, it just resonated so much with her. And so your books really just draw people in because they're familiar to people, because people find ways to connect to them. And this book, I think definitely, there's the mother-daughter dynamic is incredible. So like that mother-daughter dynamic between Domenica and her daughter Matilda, is that based on relationships that you've had with your grandmothers or your mother or mother-in-law?
Yes. You said so many incredible things, Anne-Marie. I thank you, first of all.
I'm rattling. My
I love it. I love it. But you said something, I write strong women characters. I don't know any other kind.
Good.
And I'm looking at these squares here and I'm going, I see it. Now, I may not have known your mothers and I may not have known your grandmothers, but I do know them through you. I know them. I know what you're made of. I know what every woman in every square is made of here. They don't take any crap. They know who they are. But where we get in trouble is that we're selfless and we serve. And I saw women do that a lot in my family, pretty much all the time. So when I go to mold a character, I want to understand why. So Matilda is very much my grandmother Viola. If I could lift this up, the sign from her factory's up, maybe I can do it. But I hope I don't break anything, but here we go. Do you see it says Yolanda Manufacturing Company? That's that's the sign off her building. When I was 18, She said to me, is there anything you want from my house? I said, I want the sign from the factory. She found a man and a ladder. And for ladies, for years, I had this wrapped in newspaper thinking I'll frame it. My husband hung it there, and it brings me such joy. And she said, why would anybody want that? I said, because that's you. That's your gift. From the age of 14 to 4, lady. So now you get it in a factory. And then she owned her own factory with my grandfather. And I have the contracts and I have the books. I have everything. 50-50, they split it.
That's great.
So those are the kind of women I come from that I know you come from. Look, here's the thing we got to start to understand here. Immigrants, the reason you didn't know the story and I didn't know the story is because immigrants try to fly under the radar. They're scared of this, of the roundup. And what happened? The roundup. So even in America, Italian Americans now are a little more confident, very interestingly, politically split. Many say, I don't want to educate the immigrants that are coming in. Hey, we were brown before World War II. We were brown before World War II, Mediterraneans. You say, well, Adriana, what's your proof? Well, here's my grandfather's union card as a machinist. Race, brown, Italian-American, brown. So the tropes you hear about the Mexicans, you read about in the Good Left Undone, the same ones. They're taking our jobs. They're thieves, they're crooks. They eat garlic, they send the money home. All the crap, it's tropes. Who's doing the work? Italian Americans started out in service industry, stonemasonry, construction. How many of you had grandmothers and mothers and great-grandmothers that worked in factories and brought the sleeves home that you had to turn? I did cuffs, buttonholing. Think about your history and your lineage. That's who I'm writing about. I'm writing about you. That's who I'm celebrating. People don't know it. But don't ever come at me that Italian American women are put upon. They're powerhouses to me. That's just what I see as true. So when I write those messages or lessons or whatever, it's organic. It's part of the waft and weave of the lady's character.
But I have to tell you, as you're talking, their chat is saying, yes, so true. You bring tears to my eyes. My God, I love you. So what you're saying is so inspirational, and you're absolutely right.
Hey, ladies, I want to say this too. The lies that are propagated, that we're told as women. I want to send a check to the college institutions because my daughter went to college and I cried for 48 hours. And then I went, wait a minute. This is a gift now. She's launched. We did our work here. What am I going to do with the time that I have? Your husbands die. Hey, they die before we do. My mother was widowed 18 years from my father's death to her death. My grandmother Viola was widowed 42 years. My grandmother Lucia, 65 years she was alone.
Wow.
But were they sad? Of course. Is it hard? Of course. But they seized the time that they had. This lie that we're told that we're invisible after 50 is such BS. Frankly, I look around at the men and they seem a little sketchy to me. Not the women. The women look good. The women look powerful. The women are at their height of their beauty and their talents and their force. Don't let anybody tell you who you are, ever, because it's more misogyny. You know, everybody said to me, oh, wait till your daughter's a teenager and she starts giving, hey, when that teenage stuff started and she gave me that attitude, I said, never again. I don't want to see it. I'm her. I'm my grandmother. I'm the toughie. I didn't let my kid on social media. She just turned 20. I did not allow it. You want those mothers at school, they thought I was the worst. But I used my common sense. Now, did she suffer because she wasn't on social media? Well, she's not popular. You're not going to see my kid in a bathing suit on social media. You're not going to see, hey, look, I got a family with a lot of nieces and nephews. My sisters and brothers don't agree with me. They let them do what they want, not me. Now, my point in this is own it. Don't let people tell you. And don't let them tell you your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, your 80s. My grandmothers in their 80s were as productive as they were in their 60s. You just have to say that's who you are. That's what this book is about.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's so inspirational. And I want everyone to know we are recording this. So when you need that pep talk, we're going to email you the link after in the next day or so, and you can listen to this all over again, because it's true. It's just, I'm going to be 50 in April. And when I turned,
it's the best.
Well, when I turned 40, I was so depressed because I felt like, oh my God, like the worst is yet to come. But now at 50, I feel so different. I feel like, big deal, I'm 50. It doesn't matter how old you are. In my mind, I still think I'm young and I can do things. So
well, how do the Italian women do it?
Right.
Why do they tell us we don't age? I'm looking at these faces here. You girls don't need anything. You look good. Okay. It's your genes. If your genetic makeup is that you're not frail, you have good bones, okay? You look good. Why not use that? Why not have that be part of the waft and weave of who you are? Be this Italian lady. And when I say all nationalities, look, I always write the Irish best friend. I love Irish girls. I love Polish girls. I mean, I'm going to start going around the world now. Every ethnicity has a power. Our women of color, they're stupendous. You talk about taking crap. They get it the worst. And whenever I talk to male authors of color, I say, I want to hear it from you. The women in your life have it worse. They got it worse, and they'll always go, you're right. They're bearing the brunt. They're doing the work, the heavy lifting. So own it. You know, when you go to Italy, and I hope you all do, and you've been there, so you know, you reconnect with a part of yourself that is really your, I like to look at it like your fuel and battery center, your creativity. Italian women, to make a beautiful meal is a creative act. To make a beautiful home is a creative act. I get on stage and I tell stories about my grandmothers and the swatch and the weddings and the way we decorated the cars with dolls and they made the outfits on the dolls, and how through the seasons of the year, certain foods were created. What an incredible legacy we share. It's all about the family. So when people say, what are your books? They're about the family. Always, 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 always. Whether we're the maiden aunt that never got married, the one that put upon aunt, which my next book is about, how do we find our voices? How do we as strong women connect to each other?
Conchetta remembers the wedding dolls.
Make something beautiful out of nothing.
Yes, it's true. It's true. You know, my grandmother, my father's mother had 5 children, and, you know, money wasn't flowing in every direction, and she had a bunch of grandchildren, and she would whip up a Sunday dinner out of, you know, and it was never anything extravagant. It wasn't steak and lobster, and it was macaroni, sometimes homemade macaroni. But it was always you always knew that she did it. It was never a burden to her, whether she cooked for 2 people or 50 people. She could whip it together in no time. She never complained, and she did it because she wanted to do it. And that was her happiest time, was when her family was all together at the table. So it's true, women do have, we hold a lot of it together, and we put a lot on ourselves. So
I mean, I just did the math of the 3 major women in my family, 2 grandmothers and my mother. I didn't even do my aunts. I didn't go through all that. And look at the years where they're on their own and have to make it on their own. And I know if you're widowed, you're sad. Maybe some of you are sad. Maybe some of you are relieved. I don't know.
I'm sure it's a mix of both.
But even if you're sad, it's a gift. You did your best. You loved hard. You played hard. You built a life. You built a home. But you don't have to take care of him now. That's time for you. And so you ladies are saying, well, what am I going to do with this time now? I want you to go to Target tomorrow and get a notebook, and I want you to get a pen. And I want you to begin to just record some of the things you remember, because the most important thing you can leave your family is your story. And women traditionally do not have time because we're busy doing things. And then, of course, you know, we begin to value other things. One of the great things that the younger people have taught us now, they don't care about the dishes. They don't care about the silver. They don't care who gets the wine glasses from Murano that you got on your honeymoon. They don't care. What they need from you is you.
Absolutely.
And what you remember.
Absolutely.
What you remember about your grandmother. What did she look like? How tall was she? What did she say? What did you take away from that relationship? Even if she was mean and you didn't like her. But of course, there's that line in this book that I love so much. My grandmother said it to me and I rewrote it. But my grandmother said to me, hey, when you meet an old lady and she's mean, she's got her reasons.
That was great. That was a good one. One question that I had while I was reading this, it takes place parts of it take place during World War II. Was your family in Italy at all? Did you have family in Italy that were affected?
Oh, very much. I have cousins there. The contemporary story is based on the cousins. There are a lot of stories that I hope and pray I can bring them to you, that I live long enough to write these stories, because there's 3 stories that are interconnected that I want to do for you. And it's going to require me going there and living. Now, what's interesting, ladies, I'm going to do it. I'm going over there. I'm going to live there. I have Gina Casella out of Philadelphia and now New York City. You can come and visit. We're going to figure it out. I want you to connect to that with women. You know, people do it all the time. My friend Frances Mays does it. It's a little different. She's not Italian. I'm really into the getting my hands in the dirt. I just got home from there. I'm going to do a movie there and a television series that we're developing. I mean, and they're comedies. But I feel that my voice in writing for you, I want to infuse it with those roots we have. I'll get my hands in the dirt there. And I encourage you to think like that. What haven't I done? And you can't even anymore use the excuse that you don't want to walk a lot, because you don't have to. They've got like the hover rounds over there now. They've got the little golf cart things. You don't even have to schlep unless you want to. I promise you, if you come up with ways, when you get that notebook, and that pen, I like these kind. It's because I can then balance them on my lap if I'm going somewhere. When you get them, I want you to start making it about you. Because 50% of history has not been recorded because there are no women in history writing it. And I know the men always bring up Amelia Earhart, but she got lost, so forget her. I'm talking about your history. I'm talking about what you've been through. There's women in these little squares tonight that have had cancer. There's women tonight that have been suffered all kinds of abuse. There's women here tonight that have been depressed, disappointed, abandoned, led their families out of terrible times, but never took any credit for it. We have to close that circle, ladies, because we go, no. Women don't really need the credit, because women, we do things because, they have to be done. We want to do it. We want what's best for everybody because we're service people. The men don't think like that. The men want the credit, the legacy, the history, the statue. They want the statue. I tell my dear Angelo Vivolo this all the time, that women, we have a hard time relating to Columbus. Why don't you call it Mother Cabrini Day? We can relate to her. We can relate to somebody who worked 24/7 to help the poor. Now we understand that. Or poured everything they had into someone else's education, sometimes their husbands, sometimes their brothers. How many women in these squares can tell stories about how the money for the education in the family went to the brother and not to the sister, not to the daughter? To the son, not to the daughter. We've been serving, we've been put upon, we've been silent, we've been quiet, but no longer. Now it's about you. We have the opportunity. We couldn't do this. I mean, listen, everybody hates these Zooms. I love them. We're connecting. And then we can in person. It's great, but it's about ideas and thinking. And tonight when you go to bed, I want your brains to be being like, okay, how am I going to tell that story of my mother? If we don't do it, guess what? I always feel like I was on the tail end of everything, okay? Like I missed a lot because I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s. I felt like I missed everything. And my grandmother would say, oh, you really missed it. They'd say it to me all the time. Boy, was it nice. And they would tell these stories, these family, wonderful stories. And they were told to me, so I tell them to you. You must tell them to the people that you love, particularly the young women. And with this social media hoo-ha, they're just trying to hike their skirt a little shorter. Then it's a little deeper. Look, when you're young, okay, great, do it. What do we care? That's not the point. But you're made of something if you come from this line of women. You're made of something. And those stories have to be told. That's all this book is about.
Well, we have some questions in the chat, but before we get to that,
my poor Angelo. Angelo's going to go, why aren't you going to support Columbus Day? We need to keep our day, but let's get real about what today's about. It's honoring Italian American contributions. I think we have a conversation to have there.
Definitely.
I don't want to lose the day. We deserve the holiday.
I agree. With this book, The Good Left Undone, how long did it take you to research and to write it? And because there was so many facts in it, and there's just so much to it. There's so much substance. And as you said earlier, you wrote 300 pages that you had to cut. So what was how long did it take?
Well, books to me, I mean, the actual writing of them takes a few years, but the research can take a lot more than that. So this one I would give me 18 years maybe, because you say, but oh, Adriana, you write a book a year. Well, kinda. I'm ahead of you and the reader. And what I do is I, like you, multitask. I don't write more than one book at a time, but I can have research processes going more than one at a time. So that when I get to the place of writing the book, which takes a couple years, and now, of course, in the world of publishing, it's getting crazy, because self-publishing, when I started this 22 years ago, was 5 or 6 books were self-published. And last year in the United States, 1.8 million were self-published.
Wow.
So to get our Italian stories through, I'm in what they call traditional publishing. I'm published by Penguin Random House. And you all have supported me, which I love and appreciate, and I pray for you. For an Italian American girl to get in there, not easy. I'm finding our tribe in there and pushing them. Hopefully supporting them as they supported me. But it's a long process to write a book. And then when you get into with your editor, then it escalates. Then you're looking at 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
But you're talking about a book like this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You briefly touched on what the next book is going to be. Can you talk about that a little bit more in detail?
Well, I really think we need to laugh. And I love to write comedy. And so, there's always some funny in my books, but I like to write comedy. And right now I'm writing a story about a family and a woman in the family. She's this person, when she does all the work. She makes the Sunday dinner, she does this thing. And she'll speak and nobody listens. Nobody hears her. And she's a young woman. She's the baby in the family. And it's what happens when she finds that voice.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Does it have a title yet?
No.
Can you say no title yet?
No title yet.
Okay.
Untitled.
Untitled. Okay. All right. I have some questions that are in the chat. My daughter actually wrote one down. So she definitely wants you to answer this one. Antonella had asked, I found that Adriana's book paralleling the controversial issues of today, such as abortion and dictatorship. What was the thinking behind it? It seems that every time women were hardly trusted, it seems that every time women were hardly trusted to make proper decisions for themselves.
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, your daughter would bring up the things that have polarized society.
She highlighted Antonella's question.
Well, listen, I'm Catholic and I am a Roman Catholic and I'll be buried a Roman Catholic. Does that mean that I don't, does it mean that I agree with everything? Does it mean that I didn't have my heart ripped out of my body at the whole sexual clergy, the scandal? Yes, that killed me. But if I'm going to talk about abortion, I am so tired of that because it is one aspect of a woman's reproductive experience. Maybe not a part of her experience if you do not believe in it. But I was talking to a wonderful priest last week because I consult my clergy. And I said, I was lying in bed the other night, Father, and I said, I'm one of 5 girls and there's 2 boys in my family. I said, the 5 daughters were not born with free will, but the 2 boys were. This goes back to the theme that I'm talking about. I trust you to decide what's right for you. Every woman that's had a baby that's in the boxes here knows your birth story. You may have a daughter that suffered from infertility and had to go for fertility treatments. You using modern science. You may have a beautiful grandchild because of that, you die if something happened to that child. It's not, the way they get us is they divide and conquer and polarize us. So I would say always, I trust the person, the woman, even the man, with the salvation of their own soul. Immigration, I think I've been pretty clear. We are them. We are the Mexicans at the border, ladies. And we have not done right by them. And history will not be kind. Last night I had a gentleman on, and I hope you sign up for my Facebook Live show. We do a lot of fun books, but we did a book. I want to show it to you. It's here. Oh, here it is. Life-Changing, The Pulpit War by David Kurtzer. He is a professor at Brown University. This won the Pulitzer Prize. And it's the story of what happened with the Nazis and the Italians during World War II. Now, most of us who have some Southern Italian in us know that the Southern Italians were very anti the Nazis. But that wasn't true across Italy. And Mussolini reigned for 20 years and he was never elected. He was selected by the king. And this Pope that was Pius XII could have stood up to them, and he didn't. He didn't stand up to Hitler. What have we done about these kids at the border? I'm with you. I wrestle with this. I sleep on it. I go, what are we going to? Propaganda. Another great theme of this novel, if you've read it. For 11 years prior to 1939, and I paid thousands of dollars for page 252, which I didn't want to do because I didn't want to give them the money, but I had to do it to show you, to prove to you the lies that we're told. Let me read this to you. Because I know sometimes when I'm reading a book, I skip these things. Don't skip this. Thousands of dollars I had to pay to the Daily Mirror to reproduce this by John Boswell. I could have made it up and not paid all the money, but I went, no, no, no. I wanted you to have the real deal so that when you went to research, you could find it. But you're not going to just find this little article. You're going to find thousands of them. Because they used to say the Italians were taking our jobs, they're replacing us, they're dirty, they never hire Brit. Well, I'm going to read it to you. Keep in mind, if you loved E.M. Forster and Room with a View and all those great movies where, you know, where the British women go to England, or they go from England down to Italy and get the sun and they have the manual and the thing and the thing. You know, the Merchant Ivory movies, they're all true. From John Boswell in the Daily Mirror, there are more than 20,000 Italians. It's written in 1939, ladies. There are more than 20,000 Italians in Great Britain. London alone shelters more than 11,000 of them. The London Italian is an indigestible unit of population. He settles here more or less temporarily, working until he has enough money to buy himself a little land in Campania or Tuscany. He often avoids employing British labor. It's much cheaper to bring a few relations in to England from the old hometown. And so the boats unloaded all kinds of brown-eyed Francescas and Marias, beetle-browed Ginos, Titos, and Marios. Now, every Italian colony in Great Britain and America is a seething cauldron of smoking Italian politics, black fascism, hot as hell. Even the peaceful, law-abiding proprietor of the backstreet coffee shop bounces into a fine patriotic frenzy at the sound of Mussolini's name. We are nicely honeycombed with little cells of potential betrayal. A storm is brewing in the Mediterranean, and we, in our droning, silly tolerance, are helping it to gather force. That's the facts. Your grandparents and your parents, and I could say even me, felt the sting of prejudice and more. There was no upheaval in publishing about Italians not getting published. We just kept pushing. And thanks to you, we're here. History, historians teach us, repeats and repeats and repeats, but it's getting worse. Your origins and your identity matter. They are the foundation of history. The Italians are one group that holds on to the village. Sometimes I'll ask Americans, where are you from? Oh, they don't know. No, they don't care. That's to our peril of folly and destruction. If you don't honor your grandmother and you don't tell her story, you're not doing your job. If you don't support the Italian American Museum that's hosting us, you're not doing your job. Now, propaganda. There's a channel that spews one side only, and there's another channel that spews another side, and people go, I'm sick of all of it. You can't afford that anymore, ladies. You can't afford it. You got to figure it out. Doesn't mean one party over the other. It means what is the right thing, and you know when something's not right. You know it. You can't look away and say, well, he's good at that. No. What are your values? How did you get here? How did we get this opulent American lifestyle? I'll tell you how you got it. You got it on the energy, commitment, and hard work of the people that brought you here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Adriana, you are so inspirational, and I'm getting text messages from my friends who are on telling me this is the best and they love it, and in the chat people are saying that they love it. But we have a question from Maria. I'm going to butcher her name and I apologize. Maria Guerra. I believe she's also an author.
Can I address one thing before you ask me?
Sure, sure.
There's a question about, do you write about, include the phenomenon of like the church letting people down because you wish to expose it? Or is it a technique? Is that what you were going to ask me?
That's what I was going to ask you, yes.
Oh, ask me.
Okay, so Maria's question is, in The Good Left Undone, the priest banishes Domenico, who's one of the main characters, for advising a distressed mother about family planning options. A similar and unjust banishment also happens to the character Ciro in your novel, The Shoemaker's Wife.
Right.
Do you write about, include this phenomenon in the stories because you wish to expose it, or is it a plot technique to propel the young characters to unfamiliar places that wouldn't otherwise have found them, that they wouldn't otherwise have found themselves in, or is it both?
You have to have an acknowledgement of what has power over you. You can't coast along and think you're in control if you're not. So yes, they can be used as plot devices. Yes, I'm a practicing Catholic. Yes, I am also practicing Catholic because of where I was raised. I was raised in Appalachia where there were no Catholics. When I moved to New York, I couldn't believe it. There were churches on every corner. They were opulent. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with the real deal, the Glen Marys who serve the poor. I didn't see the big cathedrals. I didn't know that. So my faith to me is built upon the idea of serving if I can do it. Now, within that context, one of the most favorite people in my family was a priest. My mother's uncle, my great uncle, who was also a journalist and a writer at the L'Echo de Bergamo for 40 years. He was a profound writer. He wrote books too. I don't write about the faith, but I do write about the exploitation of power. Somebody mentioned the patriarchy. What a lot of folks don't know is that in the 1920s, when women went to work, the reason that they bobbed their hair is they didn't want to get caught in the machines. That's why they didn't have this long hair. So interesting now, you turn on the TV and there'll be a 92-year-old woman with long hair. I'm like, what is that? It's a thing, right? But it's got to do with work. There was also sexual freedom in the 1920s. The diaphragm was in existence in the 1920s. I didn't know that. The condom was in existence. And there were some women who had physical, again, woman by woman, case by case, okay? There's no two reproductive stories. Even those of you who had more than one children, those births weren't alike. I trust the mother. I trust the woman. That's her business, her decision. And I say that in a prayerful state, in a spiritual state. So, when I'm talking about these issues, it's not to jab. It's to dramatize the reality of the life of Monica. Dramatize means words on their feet, words that move you. As a reader, you empathize with the nurse and you empathize with Monica, who has 3 little children in a basket, one in a basket.
Yes.
And the brute husband, the jerk.
Mm-hmm. The jerk is right.
You empathize with all of that. And if you start to think as a reader, you go, oh, I know somebody that's what we want. We want you to engage all of your senses in the story. There's a scene in this book that will tell you secretly why I'm still Catholic. The only real name in the book is Father Fracassi, who is aboard, who becomes the chaplain as a prisoner aboard the Arendora Star. He's real. And I did a lot of research on him. So I thought I'm going to name him Father Fracassi because that's really who he was. And what does he do with these hundreds of men that have been rounded up just because they're Italian, who will never see home again, who will never see their families again, who as immigrants suddenly lost their status as human beings? They were now a problem that needed to be destroyed out of the fear of this thing called the fifth column, which was this military secrets being dispersed in the Italian community. In this book is a scene where the priest says Mass. It's why I'm still Catholic. The breaking of the bread. What is more in keeping with our tradition than the gathering at the table and the breaking of the bread? In our Italian families, it's the most important thing. If you're Catholic and it's in the faith, it's also in the Protestant faith too, and the our Judeo-Christian line, because you can't be a good Catholic unless you're a good Jew. The line.
Page 303.
Page 303. When they were rounded up, people always say this about the Jews, and they said it about the Italians, and you didn't know this story. I didn't know this story. The women packed the husbands. I dramatized all of it for you in this novel. They sent them off with like a change of socks, a shirt, underwear, because they're going to be gone one night. The men figure, they're just going to sign us up for something, and then they'll send us home. The Italians wore their best suits, their hats, their Sunday shoes. They were turned out, and the wives packed their little satchels. In it, they put their food: loaf of bread, cheese, hard cheese, salami, and a bottle of wine. Boom, 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 boom. So it went. And the character Antico didn't want his wife packing all that food. He'd be back in no time. Don't give me food. But she got the loaf of bread in there. They're rounded up. People say, why didn't they fight? This is really great, ladies, because the people that imprisoned them were their friends. Why? Some of them were 2 and 3 generations in already in Scotland. They were as much Scots as they were Italians until they weren't. So this is the scene that tells you everything. And faith is a very personal thing, and I get that. And I think that in terms of, I feel we've been asked, I feel that as women, we have been asked to run everything and do all the heavy lifting, and we cannot, and we are never acknowledged. And sometimes some like my grandmother said, well, I don't know if I want women priests. But it's okay for the nuns to do all the work. When Pope Benedict, now retired, went after the nuns, didn't you raise your hand and say, hey, why don't you ordain them? You don't have enough priests. You're getting priests from foreign countries, which is great. I mean, good. But these are now factories where the poorest of the poor offer their sons to the priesthood. I'm not saying they're not great priests. I don't know. I know a few, they're terrific. But in our own country, in our own church, in our own clubs, in our own marriages, in our own families, the lack of appreciation of the role of the woman. Why didn't I let my kid on social media? I didn't like the images. I still don't. But I can only do my little part. I didn't have one mother, not one, join me in this. And I showed them the suicide rates. Because we were all young women, we'd get crushes. We thought we were dying. We couldn't breathe. We wanted to be beautiful. The most important thing, to be beautiful. It's more important than being smart. accomplished, being a good cook, la bella figura. But we know as women, that's not really true. And besides, we're all beautiful. This is some guy's idea of what beauty is. Well, it's gonna happen on my watch. Father Fracassi had spent the evening comforting the prisoners. The following morning, he found a corner You know what? Why don't you read it, Anne Marie?
Okay, I had it marked. Where is it?
302.
302.
I can't do it.
Okay. I'll start from the beginning. Fracassi had spent the evening comforting the prisoners. The following morning, he found a corner and set up a makeshift altar on his suitcase. The altar cloth, chalice, paten, and pyx were placed on the suitcase as they would be on the marble altar at St. Albans in Ancoats. The police had been kind enough to let him pack his essentials of his trade in the rectory before putting him on a train to Worth Mills. Fracassi opened his prayer book and made the sign of the cross. A few men removed their hats and joined him. Word spread through the mill that the priest was saying mass. "Let's pray," Meucci said, and turned to the altar. Sabatini was skeptical. He whispered to Antica, "My faith is in the farmer who churns the butter for my scampi." Sabatini believed it until the chatter in the mill fell away, until a reverent silence set in, and the only voice that could be heard inside the mill was Francassi's. "Gentlemen, it may appear in the situation that we're in that we are helpless, but I assure you God is listening." Antica leaned in to hear the message. Piccolo Meucci put his hands on his father's shoulder. Sabatini pulled a cigarette out of his case. He looked to the altar and sheepishly returned it to the case. He too listened to the priest. Francasi continued, "He will not forsake you. He will not abandon you, but you must pray. God knows your heart." St. Benedict was the wise doctor of the faith. He encouraged us to reflect on the past, make peace with it. You cannot control the evil done to you. You cannot turn back and right the good left undone. You cannot make up the time wasted, but you can earn your salvation. Open your heart to his love. All is forgiven. We find strength in our confession, and we need it, gentlemen. We need it. You want me to continue, or that was the quote? Keep going?
Yeah, read one more paragraph.
Okay. Antica shivered when he heard Francassi's words. Did the priest know something? "Forgive me, my brothers. I don't have enough wafers to give each of you Holy Communion. When I was collected at the church yesterday, I brought only the essentials. It did not matter to the men. They knelt for the consecration." Antica opened his suitcase. He smiled at the thought of his wife, who had insisted he take the bread for his journey. Even in this instance, she was right. Antica tapped the man kneeling in front of him and handed him the bread. The man nodded and tapped the man in front of him, giving him the bread to pass forward. And so it went until it was passed through the crowd and made it to Francassi's altar. Francasi thanked the men for the bread and proceeded with the mass. He prayed over Antica's donation and consecrated it. Francasi broke the bread and invited the men to take communion. A prisoner in the front row stood to serve as altar boy. Others became ushers and helped organize the roles of communicants in an orderly fashion, so Francasi might serve every man in Worth. Francasi began to distribute communion to the men closest to the altar. He broke a few crumbs, placed one on the tongue of the first prisoner, then another and another. Each communicant made the sign of the cross before returning to his knees. By the time the priest reached Antica in the book, there was a small piece of the consecrated bread left. "You provided the bread?" Antica nodded. "Thank you." Antica kept his head down. He hadn't been to church since the incident that ruined his hand. "I'm not worthy, Father." "You are worthy, my brother." Francasi waited. He placed the consecrated host, a crumb of the bread so small the priest had to pinch it between his thumb and forefinger on Antica's tongue. Antica tasted the bread of life and felt redeemed.
I want to address our beautiful Loretta Dragone. I think she's saying Papa needs to stay, the Pope, the Holy Father, needs to stay out of politics, global warming, and socialism. Catholics and Jews died because this guy didn't stand up to him. You call it politics? I don't call it politics. Call it morality. Global warming. I agree with the Pope that we've turned this planet into a dump. You remember the ocean? Do you remember what that was like when you were a kid? Well, we still have it, right? Sort of. So you start to look at the facts of how we've ruined it with trash and garbage. When Italians cooked, always, because we were poor, we used everything. We left the world better than we found it. Socialism, Laura. That's propaganda against the poor. Because if you ain't rich, you're not worth anything. You know that's not true. You know that's another lie. Look at people and assess with your Italian-American roots.
Well, Susan says the part with the priest was so moving. It was one of her favorite parts of the book. It was one of my favorites too. It again, it just like hit you right here.
Thank you so much. I think, you know, if I didn't do anything else, if I never wrote another word, I'm glad that scene is in the book. It explains why those of us that still participate in the Holy Roman Church still participate.
I have a question. Someone had emailed me and they had wanted to know which character in the book is closest to you, but I'm going to change it up a little bit.
Okay.
I hope they don't mind. I'm gonna be a little more specific. Of all the books that you've written, because we're talking about women and how powerful women are, I'm gonna narrow it down to the women in the books that you've written, your female characters.
Okay.
Which character do you feel the closest to?
Well, in this book, you're going to be shocked because I'm old. I relate to Anina because she's so appalled that her boyfriend kissed another woman in a bar. When I was growing up, I thought that was the worst thing, infidelity. I thought, oh, that happened to me. I don't know what I'd do. Of course, now I see it differently. The worst thing to me now is if I behaved in a manner that wasn't true to my beliefs. That's the real sin. And I think the priest tries to get there with her when he says, I got 3 words for you: forgive, forget, repeat.
Yes.
Italian women have been really good at it. Italian women are really good at that. The Irish girls got hip with it too.
Okay. If it's okay with you, are you ready to go to questions
Absolutely.
from the viewers? Okay. I forgot to mention this at the top of the Zoom when we started. The museum is going to be giving away 2 books to, I'm just going to pull names randomly after the Zoom is over. So anyone who asks a question, either through the chat, or if you would like to be on camera and ask a question, you can raise your hand with the little icon that we have. I'll turn on your camera and we can turn on your volume, your audio. So anyone with questions for Adriana, now's your chance. Let's see if so I could see what's happening here. Let's see. Wait a minute. Oh, wait, I'm being handed questions.
Yeah. I see Conchetta Poitamani on here.
Okay.
Mother Marie was one of the great ladies ever. I see a lot of faces I know, and I love this.
Thank you for saying that, Adriana. She was wonderful.
I loved her. And if I could run upstairs, I could show you the wedding gift she gave me.
I just, you know,
I keep it out and think of her.
what did she give you out of curiosity?
It's a fluted bowl crystal.
Oh, of course.
She
of
loved
course.
that crystal.
Yes, she did. She loved a lot of things. Hard to get rid of
But
some of
just
them.
know she's not forgotten.
Yeah. On a side note, I'm with, I think, one of your classmates at my church. Her husband's name is Bart, and she's Bernadette.
Oh my God, Bernie.
Yes.
I love Bernie.
So we're Eucharistic ministers together at our church in Paoli.
Well, now you have my take on the whole thing,
There you go.
which I never talk about, but it came out. So there we go. I
Well,
love what Loretta says. She's energized. Good girl. Okay, go ahead. There we are.
All right, I want to read Carol Rossi's comment. She said, having a house fire with most all possessions destroyed, including most pictures, it is very important for my husband and I to bring the people and memories to life. So I think through storytelling, that's the best way to do it.
It's the best way, and you will be surprised if you put out an email to everybody that you know, family, friend, everything, and say, I lost all the pictures, help me. And this is a good note for everybody within the sound of my voice, digitize those photos and put them in another location, the cloud. Ooh.
Okay,
Yeah.
Linda has a question. Go ahead, Linda.
Hi, Adriana.
Hi, sweetie.
Hi. Are there still enclaves of Italian people in Scotland, Ireland, England?
Absolutely. This is the thing that I learned that I didn't know prior to writing this book. Every country has immigrants. The Italians in Scotland, they brought fish and chips. And so, you know, when I was working there, the Scots said, no, we made fish and chips. I said, did you ever hear of calamari? That's what it is, right? Except the potatoes. Although we do fried potatoes in Italy, in Southern Italy. So yes, they're still there. And you hear it like on my movie crew, there was a man named Pietro. I said, are you Italian? He said, yeah. I said, what is an Italian doing here? I thought I was the only Italian, but I'm also Appalachian, so I could understand them. And my crew would go, how do you understand the Scots? I said, they sound like they're from Big Stone Gap, Virginia. That's how I understand them.
Mm-hmm. I related to you about your grandmother and the cutting of the hair. When my grandmother came here in the 1920s, the first thing she did was cut off her braids. And then after about 3 years, her husband was killed. And the patriarch in Italy said, you must come back with your children. You cannot live in America by yourself. She was such a strong woman. She said, no, I'm staying here. Funny story, he sent another one of his sons to marry her. And she did marry him, but she was the strongest woman I have ever met. And I hope I have some of her genes in me.
I think you do. I think you do. That's a great story. See, that's beautiful. That has to be recorded for all time.
I am going to start recording. I always say I could write a book with the stories I know, and I never wrote it down.
That's the good use of this thing.
Yeah.
This is the good use.
Yeah, I think after this Zoom, there's going to be a shortage of notebooks. Every
I hope
woman
so.
on here is going to go and buy a notebook. Lynn has a question. Go ahead, Lynn.
It's more of a comment than a question.
Lynn.
I never knew about any of the Italians in Scotland and Ireland until I read the book, and you pushed me to do research on it. And that was an eye opener for me. And for the girls in my book club also. And we've read all your books, but this was a very different book than what you've written. And we really, really enjoyed it. And I just want to let you know that.
I'm thrilled. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lynn. And please thank the girls in the club.
Well,
I'm thrilled.
We have a comment from Jennifer Brogan. She's in my book club. And she says, not a question, but a comment. I am so touched by how moved Adriana gets. So very human. Thank you.
Well, yes, but I'm with my sisters.
Yeah, I'm a crier too. So when Amory was
I'm kind of not.
oh,
I'm really not a crier, which is so funny. Except I really believe look, my family's like your families. We fight, right? We got fights going on all the time that we got to put out fires, and people disagree about how to handle things in this democracy.
I can attest.
But we got to pull together. Yeah.
We do. Jen is a definite crier. There are times where I'm watching a movie or reading a book and I'll say to myself, oh, she would cry at this
I
point.
would.
So,
when Amory was reading from the book, I was crying, and then I see Adriana cry, and I'm like, I'm not alone.
Thank God for paper towel. I'm like, oh.
Susan says, I can't thank you enough for the vivid, strong women characters you write and how you tell our story. I cry through every book as I am reminded of my family and my grandmothers and my aunts. Wait, let me scroll down. Oh, my aunts. Oh, I missed it. Okay. I apologize, Susan. I'm going to try to get back to it. Oh, my daughter's saving the day here. I cry through every book as I am reminded of my family and my grandmothers and aunts who are gone, but who are wholly responsible for the accomplished and happy woman I am today.
Good.
Well, we have Francine has her hand up again. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, Adriana. I really love your work as a writer and as a person who's literate and in the field of education. I have a question for you for young Italian women writers. What advice would you put out there to keep this stream of consciousness of oral history and connecting the old world with the new modern world vis-a-vis all of this technology and all of this family separation that we're seeing as a result of modern society?
Well, I have 7 to 8 interns every summer. So if you know a young woman and she needs to be an intern, we pay. I invite them into the experience so that they can learn sort of how to do it. I do workshops and I try to just, and listen, I was on the phone today with Lisa Scottolini, who sends her love to all of you. She's the real deal. David Baldacci is the real deal. Lorenzo Carcaterra is the real deal. We're trying to band together to get these Italian American stories out there as much as we can. And so to any young woman, young person, young man, what I like to say about that is I want them to stay in school and study writing, listen to your teachers, and then really explore while you're in school, what are the stories that you want to tell? And most importantly, to talk to the oldest people in your family and get their stories down. And I'm sure that, Francine, you've done that as a teacher. You know what I'm talking about. It's really building you're building basically your Bible. And then you can pick and choose which stories. Now, let's talk about the Italian American in the United States of America as a concept. Our people are really, we're the backbone of every institution, in my humble opinion. And we don't get the respect. To me, the main part of that problem is that the women are not speaking up with their stories and are not owning their success. So I think once we start doing that, and you ladies go get your notebook, we'll start the army going here. other thing I'm going to say, support Italian American artists every way you can. Maybe you say, oh, I don't want to listen to Lady Gaga. Listen to her. Maybe I don't want to read Gately. Read them. Buy the books. They have this thing in the snooty halls of publishing where they say Italian Americans don't buy books. And I go, that's not true. They buy books. And you know how I am. I'm like you. I want the price cut down. I'm in there fighting to get these prices slashed. So just know, you know, bucks, $13, it keeps the machine. It helps your granddaughter get in. Because let me assure you, I have been successful enough that there are a lot of copycats out there who aren't Italian. And I want your family in there. Commercial is commercial.
Adriana, I just
That's
want
why
to,
I direct and that's why I write, because I dramatize my stuff. I want to be responsible for that too. Yes, dear. What's the question?
Linda commented, Linda Wargo, I have 3 daughters and now 4 granddaughters. I always tell them to get a backbone where your wishbone is. I love it. It's great.
Linda Wargo,
That's
I
fantastic.
think that's brilliant.
Thank you. I
Fantastic.
just posted something and I typed it really fast with my long nails. I said, you should all join your local sons and daughters of Italy and America to support Italian Americans. I typed it a little wrong, but that was the gist, that join the local lodges. They do great work for
Wonderful.
wonderful work for Italian image, for charities. You should join it. I'm president of my lodge and I know what we do.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Adriana, it's Nancy. Hi,
Nancy.
how are you, my friend?
Good.
I just want to say, after I became national president of the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy and America, I made a box. I bought a box and I put in all of the notes and gifts and a lot of things that I received, and a lot of Italian books from my 2 grandsons. And I wrote them a note about how they should always be proud of who they are. And I'm so glad I did that, because now that it's a year and a half down the road, I don't know if I'd go back and do exactly what I did, but it's for them. And I'm just so proud to be an Italian American woman and someone who has stepped ahead and fought for what I wanted and really got where I wanted to be.
Well, Nancy, you're our fearless leader.
Well, no more, but
No, listen. I know you're self-effacing about it, but I know how many years you put in and how hard you've worked. And I think you have elevated us. I think you're one of the big reasons we're elevated.
Thank you.
We're having this conversation tonight. So I don't ever want you to stop. And I think that that again, I observe I always want to be nice, but sometimes I get annoyed because they have these big Italian American leadership things with one woman there.
Right.
What are you doing? And a lot of puffery. And puffery's okay, whatever. I got a beating if I bragged, okay? So I don't brag. But there's a lot of men that think it's just part of the waft and weave of public life now, due to the things we've experienced in the last several years. That said, in the Italian American community, we got a lot of conversations we need to have.
Yeah, I agree.
I love what Linda says here. Nancy became national president, showed that women can do anything. Absolutely.
And it's a long time coming, and I did it. I did it for everybody. I really did. And I enjoyed all of
By
your
the way, you
books.
probably needed it like a hole in the head. It's a
I
lot
didn't
of work.
like a hole in the head, but
It's a lot of work, and
it is a lot of
of
work.
coordinating, and it's
But you know, it's funny. My mother was a very civic-minded person. She was, you know, a PTA president. She was a civic association president. I had what they called at the time, a mentally retarded brother who lived at home with us. And she had a lot of responsibilities, but her civic-minded, she was just such a civic-minded person that I kind of took that with me. And my grandmother, my nanny, who lived home with us, she used to make bathing suits, and she used to bring home her little tickets. You know, they had little tickets.
Yes, that's
Yes.
my life.
That's how you got paid. She used to bring them home, and
They were called bundles. They're
Right,
bundles.
Rundle. But so there's a lot I still could probably write down, and I'm going to go out and get my
Please.
notebook tomorrow.
I mean, what you're writing about the Nancy, when you write, you got to describe to us the manufacturing. Women brought the work home.
Right. Right.
Well, Melissa, it relates to this. Melissa had said, can we please have a follow-up with all of us with our notebooks?
All right,
So-
here's the deal.
We are all getting our notebooks.
Anne-Marie, everybody get your notebooks. We can do it on Zoom the next time, and then we'll do it in person.
And that would be
And
great.
I
That would
can
be great.
bring in, and I can help you each. And then maybe we'll get empowered to publish something as a group.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Oh, like short stories, little short
A
stories.
compilation.
A compilation.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right, we have a lot of people on board for this. This is a great idea.
You coordinate and I blow in and I'll help do it.
All right, it's a deal. We will do it. Loretta is saying yes, follow-up notebooks in hand. We have a question from Stella. Adriana, do you find that younger readers are also interested in these stories as our communities become more and more Americanized because we are moving further into the 4th and 5th generations? Where do you see the future of Italian-American literature going?
Well, I was at an event with our current Governor Hochul, New York State, and she said to me that Italian Americans are the biggest ethnic group in New York State. Did anybody know that? I didn't know that. We are the biggest ethnic group in New York State. Now, as assimilation goes, we lose. The only reason we lose the stories is because the women aren't telling them. If our little army starts this, and we help the woman next door who doesn't know how to tell the story, or we get her involved and she comes to the meeting and she brings a notebook, you see where this can go. We live on in the story. Repeated, written, dramatized. So if we make a commitment to doing that, I'm not saying that the world won't continue to change as we, as we mix and assimilate. But let me get to my main point, as I was just in Italy, as you were. Italy, from the beginning of time, as a center of culture and civilization, from the beginning of time, was the most evolutionary immigrant mixed water on three sides country. Italians have everything in us, everything. We have it all in us. And look at us. Not bad. So the same goes in America. If you hold on to the stories and that's your treasure, that's what the next generation inherits. And I find the young people, now the ones in their teens and 20s, are incredibly fascinated by this. And I have yet to meet the first person, except the ones, maybe there's one that changed his name and did a mob show on television, that wasn't proud to be Italian. And maybe he is too. I don't know. I have never in all my travels met anybody who didn't love to go to Italy, love Italians, or love Italian Americans. And I bet if you sit there and think, you'll go, you know, I don't know anybody either. Everybody wants to be Italian. And just as a sidebar, for 25 years, I've tried to sell an Italian American family on television, and I can't do it. They don't want the story coming from Italian Americans, but oh, too bad for you. If you gift the story of Italian Americans, if you gift the books, hey, I got enough cheese. I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me. I'm here to serve. Okay? It's always my intention. But you must gift the books, share the books, send people to the library to read the books. If you're a teacher, teach these novels. And that's how the stories become part of us forever.
Okay, we have a comment by, wait, I like this comment. I have to, okay. Francine says, love the idea of a compilation of women's stories, the cradle of civilization. We have a comment by Alexis, and then we're going to take Kara's question. Let me see, my assistant here is helping me because I'm touching the wrong buttons. Alexis says, just a long comment. My mother and I became fans of yours after reading Lucia and have read all of your books. My mom has always said that one of the best days of her life was when we met you at a book event in Bay Ridge and you took the time to talk to her and take a picture with her. I lost my mom 14 months ago and just wanted to thank you for giving us that cherished memory and giving us your books to bond over.
Thank you, Alexis.
This is what you do. You just bring women together. It's wonderful. Kara, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm here. Can you give me a second? Thank you. My friend just walked in. We're making fish. I'm not totally sure what my question, I think I know what my question is. I think I'm a little shaken up by that last comment because it has a little bit to do with my comment / question, which is that I think, well, I know I've always embraced my Italianness since I was little, except recently my Nonna passed away 14 months ago actually as well, which I think is why I'm a little shaken up. And I regret not having asked her many stories. I know a few, and I think I already know the answer to my question here because maybe my story is the fact that I lost those stories. But what would you do? And I'm not crying because I'm sad right now. I think I'm crying because I'm overwhelmed by so much just gratitude because communities like this make me feel like less alone. But what do you recommend for somebody who lost that that great Italian woman in their life?
But you haven't lost her.
No, I know that because
You are her.
every time I cry. No,
Okay, I know, I get it, but you are her. And now you must carry on her legacy. And you know a lot more than you think you do. And there are many people in your life that are alive who you can go to right now, person by person. What do you remember about her? I carry around a check my grandmother signed, and I look at her signature. I want you, Kara, to look at your beautiful Italianness. It's killing me. I mean, you have everything. You have the nose, the eyebrows, the lips, the face, the whole. I mean, you could be Italian girls they're phenomenal.
They are.
Absolutely gorgeous. And what
I got that from her.
I'm sure you look like her. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your notebook and you're gonna make a list of everybody that knew her. And everybody will have a different story. You're gonna hunt down her recipe cards. You're gonna take pictures of them. You're going to scan them so the whole family has them. You're going to once a week do something she would have done. Okay? Whether you know what I do every morning in honor of my grandmothers? This big mug, I foam the milk, I make the coffee, I sit, I meditate. It centers me.
Yeah.
I was talking in the office today to my little team, Andrea and me, and I said, I have all my grandmother's hats. I'm gonna photograph my daughter in her hats.
Oh, wow.
You see where I'm going here?
Yeah.
Kara, you have the stories. You have them. You have to recognize them as such. And I'm going to beg you to not be hard on yourself, because when we're hard on ourselves, the energy that we are supposed to put into our storytelling, we put into feeling bad, which, by the way, Italian girls are very good at, because that's how they controlled us.
Yeah. Wow. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. She had she spotted that in me as well, probably because I think she did a similar thing.
She probably did. What was her name?
Her name was Anna.
And what was her maiden name?
Arcieri.
Gorgeous. And what was her married name?
Ronzetti. My name, Ronzetti.
You have to have a place in your home that you honor her, and it will attract the stories. You didn't lose. Listen, all she wanted for you, Cara, was to love you.
Oh yeah, no, she did it great. I feel like I lost.
Of
Yeah,
course.
but you're right. I didn't lose anything.
It's horrible. It's horrible that I can't call them. And questions come up all the time.
Yeah. And the language thing is a wild thing, because it wasn't until she was dying that she started speaking Italian, and then I taught myself Italian, and I'm trying to find young Italian Americans or any Italian Americans who I could practice the language with. And that was my other question, is like, how do you recommend? But somebody here was talking about the Italian Sons and Daughters, and I've signed up with them, and I'm trying to check out people on meetup.com and things like this. But this is just incredible. If we could meet up with our little notebooks, that would be great.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna workshop it, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it through the museum. And think about it. We have a museum.
Yeah,
we will do it. We will do it. Conchetta's daughter, Katie said, "I want to thank you for giving us this space to speak and celebrate our heritage. After listening into this conversation, I would love to listen and have more of these opportunities." And that's just, a lot of the comments are saying the same thing. So I think we definitely, the museum, I will, on behalf of the museum, make sure that we do this again and we have our notebooks. And I will set it up with Adriana and her assistant, Andrea, who was wonderful. Thank you, Andrea, for helping us put this together.
Absolutely. I want to, oh my God, the Portamanis. Oh my God, you look like your grandmother. Oh my God. What a beauty. The Cacciolis and the Portamanis.
And Portamanis. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, the Cacciolis and the Portamanis, and I know them all well and I love them.
And Adriana, for my 29th birthday during COVID, I celebrated by having the big time in my apartment.
Good girl.
Yeah.
That's our Lady of Mount Carmel celebration in Rosetta, Pennsylvania.
with the trophy from my great aunt.
And we had a copy of the book there so people could see Queen of the Bigoton.
That's right.
I love it. Okay, now there's something that just came up in the notes, which I love. I just love your family. Okay. I took my grandmother's, this is Linda Wargo. I took my grandmother's recipes and had them translated and put in a cookbook form and gave it out at a family reunion. Yes. And then there was another one. Oh, Victoria said, recently in honor of my grandmother, I had all her handwritten recipes framed and hung them in my kitchen. You can make wallpaper now.
Really?
I'm going to say this to Cara, and I'm going to say this to the Portamanis. Take their pictures and make wallpaper. How Italian American is that? I mean, we come from the land of frescoes and murals, making an homage to them. I'm going to tell you something. Social media to me is a tool to get the storytelling going and moving through. The most popular, and I mean in the millions, is when I show a picture of my mother. If I show my grandmother's, millions.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
That's about as deep as it goes, Cara. You'll understand when you have a child. And when you go to Italy, whether you're in a field of corn or sunflowers, you find the Blessed Mother. You look up, you're taking a picture of one thing and you look up and you go, what's that? It's the Blessed Mother. She's like she's in relief. She's against a building. You go, what was she? Every corner, there's a Blessed Mother. So I do it. I didn't know what to do with all my grandmother's Blessed Mothers. I put them in the window looking out. That's the stuff when you're a kid, you go, I don't want that,
In honor of my father, I just bought a new St. Joseph.
The best when you want to sell real estate.
Right. Well, he just loved St. Joseph. So the one I had that was his was all worn. So I went out and I bought a big St. Joseph, all painted and everything, and I put him by my front door. So now all my neighbors want to know, who's that?
I love it. You know what else I do? Just as a point of decoration, take a pair of their shoes, put them under a chair or at your entryway. Pair of old shoes from 1930.
Wow.
And I put tulle in them so people know they're a work of art. Like, don't try them on.
Wow.
My cousin brought me in Philadelphia. This is my Venetian great-grandmother's purse. Look at the treasures. Letters from the Veneto. Their name was Perrine. Christmas greetings, my great uncle. In her purse. Don't throw anything away. Take all her little prayer books and rosaries. They're beautiful on a coffee table, and you never forget your heritage. Her novena is in Italian. The deed to their farm.
Wow.
I agree with displaying these things because they become conversation pieces, and that's how you could tell your stories as well of your family.
In the museum, I'm sure you've got it. They went to the opera. This is the libretto from the opera, 1909. You have the same stuff. Stories aren't lost. You just have to go looking for them.
Well,
She's
on
not going
that,
to ask you, but there's something else that goes on when you start to do this, and I'm just going to warn you because I've made a career out of it. You start to know things that you didn't think you ever heard as you investigate and connect. When I was in the Alps of Italy, right before COVID, one of my cousins came out with this framed thing and my mother's wedding picture and her twin sister. Where did it get this? And my great-grandmother's picture. I brought it home. The glass broke on the plane, of course, and I took it apart. And I found this in it. My great-grandfather, Marco Spada, and his wife, Giacomina Spada. And written in Italian, that's her. This is what they gave out in Scilpario when they died. And I translated it and I found out things about them that I didn't know, but this was wedged in the back of it. So it was meant for me to find it. You have all these things in your homes. I'm the person that has my grandmother's dresses that she wore to every wedding of her children. I have all my mother's wardrobe that her mother made. Nobody wanted it. You only need one apron, Cara. You only need one thing to remember them by, and the stories will flow.
well, I think we're going to be running out of time soon. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight. I want to thank Adriana 100 times because your message is so inspiring. You give people so much joy and you're just so uplifting. And everyone go buy your notebooks, write your stories, and we will put it together and we will meet again in the near future and we can continue with this. This was fantastic. This was so wonderful. So thank you.
Get those notebooks. Oh, listen, my pleasure. I am among my sisters here. We got to lock arms, and when you get hopeless, you think about the power in little squares here. Get your notebooks. Get your notebooks. I'm going to be able to tell, for example, Connie Portamani. I'm going to be able to tell her a story about her mother she didn't know. See how this works? It's going to come from unlikely places.
Well, we have everyone's email addresses, so we will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
And by the way, in this thing, join everything I do, because all I do is give away stuff. All I do is do events. Get with it and stay with me, and we'll get this done.
Yes, and again, The Good Left Undone by Adriana Trigiani. And one other, a lot of people didn't know this. Adriana wrote a children's book, The House of Love. It's incredible. It's wonderful. I'm giving it to my niece for Valentine's Day. It's absolutely fantastic. But if anyone would like to purchase Adriana's book, the museum, Garibaldi Meucci Museum.com, we have them in our gift shop online, free shipping. So we have a few other of her books as well. But again, thank you all so much. And we will be in touch. This is being recorded. So in the next day or so, I'll send out a link to everyone and you could watch it again. You could show it to your mothers and your sisters and your daughters. My daughter's sitting here. I'm happy that she was here to do that. Again, thank you all so much. Adriana, thank you so much.
Grazie.
And I look forward to doing this again.
Mille grazie.
Thank you.
Buonanotte.
Mille, mille, mille.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.